Welcome to this week's episode of Talking Therapy. Talking Therapy is the companion podcast to my YouTube series In Therapy. We follow brave participants on their real-life therapeutic journeys with me. It's part of my mission to break the stigma around mental health, chronic illness, the reality that we all struggle. We all go through difficult times in our lives, and having the right guidance and support can be the difference that makes the difference in helping us navigate and steer through those times. And in this week's episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit about therapeutic coaching. That is the methodology that I use in the therapeutic work that I do that you see in therapy. Going to talk about giving and receiving criticism. How do we do that in a way which doesn't have to be painful and bruising in the process? We've also got a couple of questions. A question around how do you balance committing to health practices, but also having space and time for spontaneity and for your inner child. And we also have a question around how often one should have therapeutic support and care. So I want to start talking a little bit about therapeutic coaching. We've just recently opened the application process for the summer intake of our Therapeutic Coaching Practitioner Training Program. And there are often questions around this methodology that you see me use in the In Therapy series. So therapeutic coaching is really the integration of a number of different methodologies and approaches. There are key principles from psychotherapeutic approaches, key principles from coaching approaches, things like the Enneagram, hypnotherapy, neurolinguistic programming, emotional freedom technique, mindfulness approaches. It's an approach that Anna Dashinsky, the co-director of the training program, and I have been developing over the last 16, 17 years. And really, it's an approach which has evolved through noticing what works, but also noticing what doesn't work. What are the limitations and the holes in certain ways of working? My original degree was in traditional psychology. I realized quite quickly that traditional psychology tends to focus on the problem. It focuses on what's wrong in the hope that if we understand more about the problem, that's going to present solutions. In reality, though, that often isn't how it works. The one group of people that probably don't know the answer to depression, for example, are people that are currently feeling depressed. We want to understand people that have felt depressed and don't anymore. How did they do that? What was the change in their thinking, in how they related to themselves, in their habits, their behaviors? That's really the approach of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, looking at the strategies, the methodologies that we use to create change. So originally, the therapeutic coaching methodology was heavily influenced by that sort of almost conflict of studying traditional psychology, looking at the problem, but also looking at strategies to find solutions. It then evolved over time to include things like the work we developed around working with emotions, the 6 emotional styles, how to open to, allow, and connect your feelings. We gradually brought a stronger emphasis on mindfulness into the training, because ultimately what we need psychotherapeutic approaches to be able to heal the impacts of the past. If we don't deal with our past traumas, the ways that we've been shaped and bumped and wounded by the experiences of our lives, they tend to shape us into the future. So we need that focus on the past, but we also need ways of creating the future the way that we want it to be. If we drive into the future looking in the rearview mirror, we're going to crash. So that's where the more NLP coaching methodologies come in. How do you sort of design your life the way that you want it? And then how do you support yourself in taking the steps towards living that life? But we can't just deal with the past and create our future. Otherwise, what we find is that we're in the past and in the future, but we're not ultimately learning to be in the now. It's in this present moment, which is where ultimately life is happening. It's where we get to feel true pleasure and joy and satisfaction and a sense of aliveness. And that's where a more mindfulness orientation has also become a key part of the training. So we're looking at how do we heal the past? How do we create the future the way that we want it? But how do we ultimately learn to be present, to be connected in the moment? That's really the essence of the philosophy of the therapeutic coaching approach. If this is something you're interested in going deeper into, we run a 18-month, well, the fastest you can do it is 18 months. It can take 2 to 2.5 years. Practitioner training program, which takes you right from the beginning of your journey, right up to being a certified therapeutic coach. We have people that come in that are completely new to working as a practitioner. We've also had psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, psychotherapists come through the training. We really do our best to support you on the learning journey that you're on. And there are people which are doing the training primarily for self-development with an interest to perhaps one day become a practitioner. There are others that come in very clear they want to become a practitioner, but of course, self-development is a key part of the journey towards that. We really look at it as there are 3 pillars to the training process. There's self-development, really working on yourself, your issues, the stuff that comes up for you. We've all seen the incredibly unhealthy doctor. It's not inspiring. So you have to work on your own stuff. It also gives you a different level of clarity and perspective on what's going on for other people. So there's the self-development piece. There's then the skills development. There's the understanding of the techniques, the tools, the methodology. And that's a big part of the learning process, the learning journey we take people on. A lot of trainings will focus just on skills development. We believe the self-development piece is critical, but ultimately it's not just having the strategies, the tools, and the techniques. It's being able to be effective with those tools in a real-world clinical environment. And that's where we also have a big emphasis at our level 3 training on the clinical application of those tools. The Optimum Health Clinic, we've worked with well over 10,000 people in 50 plus countries around the world in the last 17 years. I like to think we've learned a few things about the real world application of these tools. And we really draw upon that learning in the practitioner training. And the senior team, so Jess Thompson, Director of Psychology at the Optimum Health Clinic, Anna, who co-developed Therapeutic Coach with me, was the former Director of Psychology. And the tutors and coaches are all practitioners, either working with the Optimum Health Clinic or trained through our own practitioner, Therapeutic Coaching practitioner training. So we really have this strong emphasis upon the clinical application of the tools and techniques that you're learning. If you're interested in finding out more about becoming a therapeutic coach, there's a free 1-hour webinar, which I talk more about my own journey to developing this methodology. I walk you through module by module, in a sense, what's covered in parts of the training program. You can then download our prospectus that really goes into depth. Each module, what you cover, what's involved. You can join levels 1 and 2 from anywhere in the world. So it's a very accessible training as well. Click the link in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, you can go to therapeuticcoaching.com and you can find out all of the information. So I want to talk a bit now about handling and reacting to criticism. Receiving criticism can be hard, right? Particularly when we feel deficient in ourselves or defensive, or many of us have had some really difficult experiences at school and as a child of being judged and attacked by teachers. And it's almost as soon as we hear someone giving us some kind of feedback, we notice our whole system recoils, or we find ourselves becoming really defensive because we just can't bear that feeling. A few things to help with this. Firstly, to accept that we all need feedback. It's through receiving feedback from other people from the world we're able to grow. We're able to see the things about ourselves we can't see. It's one of the key things, actually, of the therapeutic coaching practitioner training is the feedback and the guidance we give to students. We need that to get better. But if that feedback is a judgment, if we're actually being told we're less valuable as a human being, that's much more about the person attacking us than it is really about us. Rarely, if there's judgment, it's not something we need to take on. We need to separate the information from the attack that may be coming. Part of what helps us is really working on our own inner critic. The more we're judging ourselves, attacking ourselves, the more vulnerable and sensitive we are to judgment and attacks from other people. The more we defend, the more space we have, the more able we are then to hear, actually, someone's giving me some information here. This could be really valuable. Is that accurate? Is that not? We might go and run it past somebody else to go, do you think this is accurate about me? So it's really about finding the space within yourself to separate the information from the potential for judgment and attack, working on your own inner critic so you can really hear the kind of what's valuable there, like the diamond that's there, as opposed to being in a place of being defensive. Also look at your state. If you're wired and you're anxious, we're much more likely to be in a defensive place. The calmer our nervous system is, the more able we are to then see things as they actually are. How about when you're giving feedback? Now, it may not, but sometimes we call it criticism. I think that's a loaded word. But if you're giving someone some feedback on something, either as a parent or in a sort of professional capacity or just to a friend, firstly, be really clear where you are coming from. If you're feeling judgmental in yourself, the other person's going to feel judged. So just really look at, where am I in myself? And if I'm feeling like I'm attacking this person, why am I feeling reactive? What do I need to sort of understand better and work on in myself? Pick your moment. Just like I was saying in yourself, you need to regulate your system. If someone's in a wired, sort of stressed out place, they may not be able to hear the feedback you're going to give. And it may be better to say, I'd really love to have a chat with you about something. I can see now's not a great time. When will be a good time later for us to have a conversation? It's often not what we say which causes someone to feel attacked. It's the way that we say it. The more we can come from that calm, gentle, supportive place, the more someone feels our intention, as opposed to the sense that we're almost feeling stressed that we've got to get the feedback. And so we sort of rush it and we do it in a way that then makes them feel judged and feel attacked. Ultimately as well, be sensitive to other people's reactions. Recognize that if you're giving feedback, that might be difficult for them. But your job is to do it in a way which is caring, is gentle, is compassionate, but you're not ultimately responsible for how the other person feels. And if they go into an emotional collapse, or they have a big reaction, or they attack you back, let them have their response, but don't make yourself feel responsible for that. So when you're receiving criticism, manage your state, look out for your inner critic, look out for the kind of the diamond or the insight that might be there. When you're giving feedback, look at where you're coming from, calm your system, pick your moment, be careful not just of the words you say, but also how you say them. And ultimately, you're not responsible for how somebody else feels. You're responsible for talking and acting in a way which is compassionate and kind, but you're not ultimately responsible for the other person's reaction. So we've got a couple of your questions now. Just a reminder, you can post questions below any videos on YouTube. You can also email hello@alexhoward.com. So this first question from Lisa, I paraphrased it quite a lot because it was quite a long question, but the essence of it was, how do you balance the commitment to the practices you need for change, be that a health journey, a psycho-emotional journey, and some of that can be really involved, with also fun and spontaneity. Like, we can be so committed to our healing journey that we're actually stressed trying to get well, as opposed to having also the fun that in of itself is healing and in of itself will help calm and soothe our system. As always, as I say, if you can see it, you don't have to be it. Just having awareness of this issue, I think in of itself is really important. Make sure your commitments are reasonable. Often we overcommit, like we think we have to fix every issue in our life to be well. You don't. You have to fix the things that are in the way of your healing. There are many people that have all kinds of unhealthy habits and behaviors, unhealed traumas that are basically able to live a healthy life. The goal is not to fix everything. The goal is to fix the bits you need to fix to be well and to be recovered. So be careful of those achiever patterns having unreasonable expectations of what it thinks has to happen on the healing journey. Ask for help. If you've got all these things you have to do in a day, who can help support you in that process? Maybe someone can do the shopping for you or use online delivery services. Maybe someone can come make a vegetable juice for you each morning, whatever it may be. But see if you can get some help in the process. Also, Lisa, recognize that fun is its own practice. Like fun, joy, spontaneity, that can sometimes be far more healing than an extra half an hour of meditation, for example. So don't see it as an either or. See it as an and. It's part of your healing path. Finally, we had an anonymous question. Thank you for your last episodes, and asking for help can be a challenge. As someone who's never done therapy before, I sometimes think my issues are not big enough for therapy. How often do you think I should go and speak with someone now I've finally made the decision to ask for some help? I don't want to become dependent upon someone else to make decisions. So firstly, the goal of the therapeutic process is never to become dependent. I would raise that with the therapist right at the beginning and say that's something I want to avoid happening. Also, trust the process. We discover things about ourselves and about the process as we go. And we might go through a period of being really vulnerable and really needing of that support. And then before we know it, suddenly, if we're being taught the right tools, we feel much more empowered, and it just becomes clear we're ready to finish and we're ready to have at least a break from the therapeutic work we're doing. We certainly get to a point where if you're doing a therapeutic process that's empowering you, so rather than every time you have a problem, you go and see them, they teach you the tools to better manage things in your life, then you reach the point where it's a diminishing returns and you go, I was getting so much at the start. And actually now I sort of feel like maybe I can go from every other week to once a month, from once a month to every few months. So you can also gradually reduce the frequency of the sessions that you're having as well. So I hope that's been helpful this week. Just a reminder that the application process is currently open for the Therapeutic Coaching program, therapeuticcoaching.com, or if you're watching the video, look at the links in the description. We're currently on a break from In Therapy. We are still filming. We're opening the process for new participants. So if you're interested in being part of In Therapy, look out for the video, which describes a bit more of what's involved in that process. Please do also follow me on Instagram, Alex Howard Therapy, on YouTube, Alex Howard TV, and on Facebook. I think it's also alexhoward.tv on Facebook. As always, I hope this has been helpful. Be kind to yourself. Go gently.